Okay, so I'm here to talk about starting a USITT student chapter. And I'm Erin Carrigan, and I'm from CSU Fort Collins in the beautiful Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm going to talk about how to start a student chapter, the nuts and bolts. But I thought I would start out with my experience and, through my process, I really learned how kind of not to do a student chapter. So I'm going to share that with you too. When I was going through the USITT website, looking for the different links and things for how to, sign up for a student chapter and do all of those things, I found this tips for starting your student chapter page. And I thought it would be a fun slide to use for my experience because the photo is of our student, Danny Ranasate, who graduated last year. And she's the one who started the student chapter at CSU. Um, I came in, I was asked to be a faculty mentor for the student chapter at CSU by Danny. And Danny was really driven. She was all about USITT, and she was really driven to get a group of people together who wanted to raise money and do different events and things to send people to USITT. So she um, she did all the legwork. She signed up through her email address, which let me tell you was a bummer when she graduated and I had to migrate everything. Actually, they helped me at USITT, but it was a lot of emails back and forth. She really organized the whole group. They did the elections. I'll talk about that and all the steps you have to do in a minute. But she basically did everything. And I just had to show up to the kind of somewhat infrequent chapter meetings. Although they really got a really huge group together that year to go to USITT. I think it was like 15 students from, CSU, which was a lot because in the past there'd been like, 10 max. So anyhow, that was how we kind of started it. So I knew nothing about starting a USITT chapter, student chapter. By the way, through our institution, we have an organization called SLICE, and it's the student organization where basically they provide the students a bank account so they can raise money and through all these different fundraising kind of avenues and legally through CSU make that money and then use it later. So they need a faculty liaison or a faculty sponsor. And so I said, sure, I'll be your faculty sponsor. Those are my kind of experiences, which is not a typical route to forming a student chapter. Um, the typical route is for a faculty member to consider a few different things. They want to determine the value that the chapter is going to provide for the members. So, what is this USITT student chapter? What value is it going to bring to my students specifically? For a lot of our students in the Rocky Mountain West, we are somewhat isolated. So, it's a great way to get students to kind of mingle with different chapters, to do workshops, to do group events, right? And the students are, if they're a formal club, they can raise money and then, pay for themselves to go to those events. Um, I didn't think about any of that before we were a chapter. We were just a chapter and I became a faculty liaison, right? So I think this really intentional planning before we even get students involved is totally the way to go because then you can set up some sort of mission or framework that you can pass along to the students year after year. And I feel like it will, kind of keep the club going and not just counting on the students to keep it going, right? If they don't understand what the overall mission is, other than get people really excited about USITT, right? And raise money. So I like that the first thing on the USITT website says the activity should expand members' experience and education. And I feel like the Rocky Mountain section, like what we're doing, we're really trying to focus on that as well. So I was like, yes, this is something that you should definitely contemplate if you want to start a student chapter. Why? Why? And then getting started and the requirements. So, uh, you want to, first of all, you have to decide who's going to be the faculty mentor. That faculty mentor has to be a USITT member. At CSU, we have an organizational membership, which means we get one faculty or staculty. We call our people faculty because staff and faculty teach at CSU. Um, but we can get one faculty membership covered. So whoever is registering that year, who wants to get their registration covered, because we kind of trade off between faculty, they have to be the head of our USITT club. So you can change every year who is the head of your club. If like not everybody's going, some people only buy annual memberships, you can totally change out who the faculty mentor is every year. At first, we had myself, and then we had our production manager as the like co-mentor. So then you want to identify prospective members. To be a student chapter, you have to have 6 current USITT student members. And believe me, they will check if the students are members. So you have to have at least 6. Um, and then you can have a ton of other members, and they don't have to be USITT members to join. Of course, they have to be members to go to USITT. But 6 have to be members. And then once you identify who the students are going to be, or who the members are going to be, then you hold elections for officers. And the officers you have to have a chair, a vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. And they say that the secretary and treasurer can be combined. So you could have a secretary or a treasurer. I don't know what you would call them, but anyway, um, you have to have those particular roles in each chapter. Ah, all right. And then what is this team kind of tasked with? What are the first things on your list that you have to do once you have identified the faculty member, identified the 6 students in the or in the chapter? You have to create bylaws. I will put a link that works in there of our CSU bylaws. Honestly, the bylaws are super easy. All you really do, they send you a form and you put in your university or your high school's name into the form. There's really not a whole lot of, work that you have to do. It's pretty easy. The work you do have to do, however, is you have to create your planned activities sheet. This is something you have to submit when you apply to be a student chapter. So this is an example of our planned activities sheet. We had like a Chipotle partnership where people went to Chipotle and Chipotle gave us like, I don't know, 20% of all their sales if you mentioned USITT, the student chapter. And then partnering with the drag club to, sell tickets for our drag show. Um, we never did the Stackledy pie in the face. The Stackledy just didn't want a pie in the face. But these were just all ideas, right, from the student group to raise money. Honestly, had we considered this more carefully and thought of this more in a kind of educational and service kind of framework, I think this would have been slightly different, although there is some advocacy in here, like partnering with sound designers on campus. That we have a campus radio station, so partnering with them to talk about music, soundscapes. Spencer is also a sound designer, so I think that's why this is in here. That's of special interest to him. So this can kind of be whatever your group is interested in doing. So then you submit all of this after, you choose your members and you'll type up in the form all the members and their email addresses and then their officer roles. And then you put in your bylaws and then you put in your planned activities. Um, how this differs for high school, it's really not that much different. I mean, it's almost the exact same kind of steps, except students do not have to be members. So they took mercy on the high school students, and only the faculty leader has to be a member. So all the other criteria are the same. You still have to create the bylaws, you still have to create the uh you know all the planned activities that you're going to do and figure out who your officers are and all of that. Um, and then I collected some of the links, the student chapter guidelines. That's a whole pretty well spelled out nitty-gritty explanation on the USITT website. And then the actual link to the different named chapters and applications. There are only about 10 uh, college chapters right now, and I really think we could take advantage of these chapters if more people started them interacting with each other. Um, and then there's a link to the application in there too. There's a ton of high schools though. So this I could see this being really awesome for high schools. And then there's like a whole thing about like why start a student chapter and a whole bunch of reasons why you might want to start a student chapter. Kind of some of the things I mentioned really improving uh basically like any gaps that you might have in your own program. It's a way to identify those gaps and fill them by going to working with other universities, with professional theaters, with companies, ETC, or with Krylon, or any of those sorts of companies to fill those gaps in education. And then also to create experiences. And a lot of them mention like linking the chapters and doing group experiences, like, somebody who's going to give a workshop, especially if there's like a nominal charge. They'd much rather have 40 people there than 10 people. So joining chapters together is going to be helpful in getting some of those bigger companies, bigger names, or even smaller companies out to, lecture to the students. So, I mean, it's really straightforward, and that is basically starting a student chapter 101.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
Yay, thank you, Erin.
Hey.
So,
I have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Oh, go ahead, Mandy.
You said they have to have 6 student members to join. I mean, we all know that sometimes schools have small programs. If it dwindles below 6, do they like lose their student chapter status, or do they like go on like a hiatus, or what's the deal?
they lose their student chapter status.
So
So,
they would have to
this is
restart.
why some of the smaller universities that have smaller design tech programs have a hard time starting a USITT student chapter.
Are student chapters allowed to combine? Like, could there be like a Denver Metro student chapter?
You know, I it doesn't appear that way on their website because each chapter is assigned to a specific university.
Mhm.
But I think as we, continue down the road of inclusion and accessibility, that USITT would probably consider that if two schools were like, "Hey, we want to start a chapter, but we don't have enough people."
Yeah,
Don't
like
you
we're
think? I mean, I
in the
think.
same building as a couple of schools,
Well, you guys
and
are three schools, exactly.
right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what they would do is it would have to be named one after one of the schools, right?
Hmm.
Um, Honestly, also, USITT is not checking your enrollment and then that student is enrolled in your school. They just want to know that they have a student membership, meaning, there's some buy-in, right, to the institution. That would be my guess. That's a good.
Yeah, because it occurs to me that like I probably don't have enough students who would be sort of active, but between me and a couple of the community colleges, I wonder if we could get like a Wyoming student chapter.
That's
Um,
really smart, Aaron, because yeah, I just like places like Wyoming or Montana or Idaho,
yeah,
where our region basically.
yeah, like we we only have 600,000 people. There's
Right, right.
like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah, I wonder if that might be something that perhaps considering that this is a group of officers on the board of this region as well, if maybe this is a conversation to be had with USITT of like, look, like people in our, like, there are some really low population parts of Colorado. There's some really
Oh
low
yeah.
population everywheres in Wyoming. Like, our students deserve to have chapters, but the current setup does not support that.
Mhm.
How can we create a structure that allows for some combination?
Well, it's definitely an accessibility issue.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really, really smart idea. When I was in northern Utah, we wanted to do a actually, they did start for a little while, a USITT student chapter, but we were also kind of at a point where the program was kind of starting to really, expand. We were getting more design tech students. So we had a lot at that point, but a few years before they couldn't do a chapter because they just didn't have enough people. So, and also northern Colorado, and I mean northern Utah was an hour and a half from one school and an hour and a half from another school, right? So they're also kind of isolated. Smart to bond with the join forces with the community colleges, and they'd
Yeah.
be
Awesome.
happy,
Makes
I'm
all
sure, to
things
be part of a
possible.
yeah, well, yeah, and right, and I think they'd be happy, like your community colleges, to be part of a University of Wyoming student chapter, right?
Well,
Yeah.
you would think that. Um, there's yeah, you would hope, and I think that from our perspective as well, just sort of as UW, that's a larger outreach question, um, especially between like us and Casper College, who is
Oh, right,
the other
Casper.
largest body of technical theater students. Um, do your students like tend to really engage with the chapter and with USITT sort of broadly? Like, have they found a lot of benefit in it?
So, okay. Honestly, it depends on the student chair.
Totally.
And how, I mean, just like this region, just like the Rocky Mountain section, right? Uh,
Hmm.
it depends. You guys are bringing energy into it. You're creating a new board. You're excited. You're working. You're putting a lot of work into this region. Same with the student chapter. I mean, honestly, it's like a miniature version. So really, if you have a student that's excited and like, hey, everybody, the education applications are happening. That's in January. Apply for that. Apply for the backstage internship to get like that they're constantly like sending people emails and like and calling meetings and not canceling them because that's something that happens with students that aren't as driven or like they're like, oh, I've never done sound or lights on a show before, and I'm currently doing it, and I'm just overwhelmed, so I have to cancel this meeting, right? It's kind of depends on like who's running it, and for me, as I think 99.999% of theater faculty also feel this way. I feel like I've got enough work, up to here that I don't need to necessarily run a student chapter. It should be run by the students, right? And if
Totally.
I don't have a student who's running it, I'm kind of like, how far am I gonna go to you know, make this chapter continue, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons, like, they do say in the beginning, what is the mission? You know, just
Yeah.
just like I'm sure Erin and Mandy and Connor, I'm sure you guys have like I have like a portfolio review. It is all me. I do all the work myself to set this thing up, to plan it, to create benchmarks for every year, to call industry professionals, like it's a lot of work for me. But it's like such an important mission to me to respond to student work and to showcase student work, right? And
Mhm.
so if I keep coming back to that mission when I feel exhausted or I feel like, oh, I can't do this again. And it's the same thing with the USITT student chapter. Do you
Yeah.
really want to expand educational opportunities? And do the students want to? Do they want to learn more? Are they hungry? Are they driven? So, and especially the chair. And can they get the other students excited?
It feels like it wouldn't take a whole lot of reach out from like the region to get them more excited.
Hmm.
Like I know our students, like they see us every day, and so we're just like old news, right? But like if one of you errands came to the school, then they'd get really excited, right? Because you're new, you're fresh. You could tell them the same exact thing we told them yesterday, but they would
But it's
much
different.
rather hear it from you.
Uh-huh.
So is it something where regional sections, even just doing a reach out and like having meeting at the beginning of the year with student chapters is something that would get them really excited about.
I I definitely think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that would be an awesome networking activity opportunity. I mean that the thing is, we have board members who work at the Denver Center. We all work with different companies and design with different
Mhm.
companies. I mean, it's not just networking with fellow students, which is also really great, right? Community is fantastic, but uh networking with board members' friends, I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know, there's so much. And then also coming up with, meeting students and coming up with, oh, wouldn't this be cool if we could do this sort of training, or if we could, I've always wanted to learn how to do Clo 3D. Hey, Alyssa and Connor.
Totally. Is yours a registered student organization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a slice organization, so we can make money.
Okay.
And we have a thing at CSU. I think a lot of schools have this. It's called Ram Ride. And it's basically for students who don't want to drive or don't want to drive intoxicated, really. And if students in a club drive the shuttle that night, they get a huge, I don't even think they drive the shuttle actually. They somehow sponsor it and they get a huge amount of money from Ram Ride. So there's all kinds of different things
That's
like that we can get
interesting.
money as a student organization.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
at
university tries
my
to throw some bones.
at my undergrad, they you could get money for helping to clean the stadium after games.
Nice. That makes
Like they
total.
had a thing they had professionals to do it, but if you cleaned like a section, you got like $500 for your
That's
organization or
great.
something.
That's great. Yeah, they make it easy. They're not like, yeah. So it's like show up, right?
Yeah.
They also have the opportunity as a university organization to go to the big student fairs that are out in the quad and they can advertise their club and try to get other people involved. So I don't think my students have done that this year. I know they did it the first year. So back
Well,
to
and I
that
think it would even be
student.
fun, I think it also would be fun for the college chapters, like if there's more interest in the high school chapters, like it's also fun for both college students and high school students to be making that connection as well.
Oh, totally. And, we all know as educators, when you teach something, you really, really extra learn it all over again, right? You learn maybe some facets of it you didn't even know before, or it was a refresher or whatever. It's a great way to, I think, foster education in our students and high school students. If we had students teach, maybe show them, how to run a specific kind of light board or, like at CSU, we have all these crazy high-tech light boards. Like our lighting design faculty bought all the craziest things. And we have all these moving lights and it's just wild. And so like, doing some sort of like thing like that with a high school with a couple local high schools. I bet the high school folks would eat it up. And then also the college students would realize they're really lucky to be able to have this equipment, to show off. So I think it could work in so many different directions. But I think it's all positive. It's just the energy that you want to put into it, and then also really identifying a student that can do the thing, that can show up. So it's got to be one of your better students. It can't be, somebody with honestly a low GPA who's been in the program a long time because they can't show up, unfortunately. But
Feels like a great task for a stage management student.
oh yeah.
That feels like the demographic that we are looking
Uh,
for. Is a stage management or a particularly driven costume designer or lighting designer?
Well, what's funny is our first Danny, the one I had the picture up of, she's a scenic painter, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
Pop
she was
off
getting,
scenic painting?
huh?
Pop off scenic painting?
I know. And she's rocking it professionally too in scenic painting. So um I know, kind of surprising, right? But
Hmm. That
yeah,
is not the first discipline I would have guessed.
right, right. But yeah, the high school version is much more faculty driven.
Totally.
By college, they should start being able to do it themselves, in my opinion.
I know, I'm inclined to agree. We've got a somewhat defunct RSO that covers theater dance, well, performance dance and DPM. And I think in previous iterations, our USITT chapter, which used to be robust back in like the 90s and 2000s, was a subset of ASOPA. And we can't hardly get ASOPA to function. But I would love to get some of the DPM students interested now that I've had to go to USITT.
Yeah, right.
Thank
Are you on the
Memory.
commission now too?
Yeah, I'm on costume commission.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, absolutely. You absolutely should get them to go. Totally. I
Yeah,
know.
I think with all of us and our involvement and our commission involvement, we have a really strong ability here to start trying to like
Mm-hmm.
get some, and of course, you know, again, the students don't think we're cool. We're like, oh, hey, I'm a lighting commissioner, and they're like, eh.
I know. I know. Well, I was gonna say, sometimes, about like having a guest artist and stuff. That is the weirdest thing. At my institution, you would swear that they'd be so excited. I mean, we've brought in some huge names to CSU, and sometimes they're excited, but other times they're like, "Eh." And I'm like, really? Is it because it's generational, and that person wasn't a big
It's
star,
Saturday.
right? Right? It's so funny to me, but yeah, yeah. I think it's also just drumming up excitement and energy around it way in advance, So, although I had to I was beating my kids with the Krylon. I was like, "You guys, this is such an amazing opportunity." I really had to be like, "Come on." And then I had to pull out, "I'm going to be
On.
disappointed if you don't come." And then
Yep.
they were like, "Okay, okay."
Okay, okay. It's like I'm gonna be disappointed or extra credit. Those are the two
Yeah.
ways I con them into attending events. And after the fact, they're like, wow, that was really cool. I'm like, yeah, it's almost like I'm here to help you.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's almost like that's actually what they pay me for, is to connect you to cool opportunities.
Wild thought there,
I
Erin.
know. Going
Uh,
crazy here.
it's so true. All right. Well, that's all I've got, unless you guys have any more questions, but you know,
No, thank you so much for putting this all together.
Thanks
That's
so much,
very
Erin.
informative.
of course.
Enjoy playing.
Excellent. Well, and now you guys know, you know what? I mean, really, you know about student chapters.
Woo! Yeah, so much more that I didn't know before.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
I was
So
like, I was like vice chair of my student chapter in college, and I was still like, oh, I've forgotten everything.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, I'm sure it's changed
yeah,
too,
that
you
too.
know.
That too.
But
Yeah.
also, like I said, I learned because I really have been like a faculty member on the outskirts of, oh yeah, I'll be your token faculty member, sure, but yeah. Um, it's actually a pretty cool thing, but you got to be really intentional about it. So anyway, I hope
Thank
you guys
you
have a
so much.
lovely evening.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. And I'll see you next time.
Bye.
yep, thanks, Erin. Bye.
Thank you.